Cool. So today we'll be doing Jailbreak, and it's mainly focused at the devil modes, just because the modes before devil mode, assuming you are using a sensible lineup and you are collecting the right sorts of relics, they are all very much, even if you're not collecting the right ones, it's all very much autopilot. You can do it. So that's not to say that you can't apply the same logic to things below Devil, and in fact, I would say do the same, but it's not as required. Um, and also, whilst I'm here, let me just quickly sort out my building. Because here's a fun little tip, unrelated. So my first set of business talents is all income bonus, and then all upgrade bonus. So you can see I can now upgrade stuff. And then I can go back to income bonus, and that street mission goes really quickly. Anyway, right, jailbreak, devil mode. The first thing that is easy to overlook is by default you'll be set to normal, and at different ranks, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, you get to unlock new options. So make sure you are doing the hardest one that you can complete easily. Everything up to Nightmare, you get marginally better rewards, but it doesn't make a huge difference. It's mostly the coins, which I guess is a huge difference. But Devil is the one where you get the Super Capo Serum for Awakening, and therefore has extra value, but is also noticeably harder. So, the first thing for people who have the Mafia Pass that can watch the videos without having to actually watch them is a huge bonus. Hello, Cookie. Yes, I know, you needed to interrupt, didn't you? You need to be the centre of attention. So I would do the video boost first, and in fact this is a very good opportunity to say there's two big options. Thank you, Cookie. So one viable strategy, assuming you have Tomo, which again, for Devil mode, you'd assume you'd have Tomo unlocked by then. You don't necessarily have to have it unlocked by then, but most people will. You can do a full Japan lineup, which I have tested a number of times now, and it does work, but it is half reliant on Chiyu Awakening, and it's also very susceptible to just getting wiped out and making life very difficult. But because, for example, I've rolled this plus 15% fight power for Japan first up, it would be a potentially viable choice. It's not terrible, just not my preference. But my personal setup is also kind of cheating, and I'll get onto that in a second. So it does, your mileage may vary, very much so. At the lower, so non-Devil Jailbreak, the Japan lineup works a hell of a lot better. But then that's before Chiyu Awakening. It's just run 5 Japans and you'll just one-shot most things before they even get a chance to do anything. Cool, so what I'm going to be focusing on is defensive boosts, so HP is a particularly good one. And then things like healing as well. And the reason they have the largest amount of value to me is because my lineup minus tentacles doesn't have any healing. And again, generally with the meta that's involved and who you'd normally pick, means that you don't have any healing, or again, tentacles healing, or very limited healing generally. So to make up for the fact that you've spent all of your effort focusing on things like Azumi, on GG, on boosting tentacles, you want to counterbalance that by picking the artifacts. I don't even know the correct term for them. I'm going to refer to them as artifacts, as bonuses. So the interesting choice here is the 20% lifesteal or the 20% healing. I don't have a strong preference. I'd select both, but I've obviously only got to pick one. I'm going to pick the bandage first. But if I were to get the same option next roll, I'd pick the lifesteal because I don't have any lifesteal and I already have one bandage. So the second copy of any of the bonuses you get is less valuable than the first. So the ones I'm particularly looking for, and hopefully it'll come up now. There you go. Is I'm looking for the lifesteal, I'm looking for the bandage, I'm looking for the purple vial, which heals at the end of combat, because they all come in great value. There's two interesting ones that have come up here. Thank you, Cookie. There are two interesting ones that have come up here, which is the lemon juice, which heals based on fight power. It's particularly useful for the first few levels, and the first few levels are where they're hardest because you've got the least amount of artifacts. So it's a good choice if you see it early, like specifically now where I haven't even done a single fight. I particularly favour lemon juice, even over the 30% lifesteal, because it's a unique one, and the unique ones come up less frequently. So lemon juice. I should have also mentioned the iced tea is also a good option, but it's more focused towards the fight power, and again, initially, the first ones I'm looking for are all the healing options. And another unique one that's come up here is the pig's blood. Friendly Capo's nerf skills also disables target's skill on death. There's a lot of on-death skill triggers that come up in Devil Jailbreak, and again, assuming people have tentacles, I would generally suggest running it, and therefore you're disabling 3 capos on death skills. So that one has, I would always snap pick that. And again, all of the other two options, even though they're legendary, they're higher quality, they're both affecting fight power, so they have a lower value to me. Last one that comes up. So, last one that comes up is going to be the crit chance. So, for me personally, because I have deluxe gear and I have, or I'm going to have lots of plasma blasters running, I'm already going to have a really high crit chance, so I don't particularly need it. However, since it's come up against Japan and business fight power boosts, I am actually still going to pick the crit chance. But now that I've got that 50% crit chance, I personally, for this setup, won't pick any more. But if I was on my second account, where I don't have the plasma blasters, I would try and pick up almost 100% crit chance. I wouldn't, again, necessarily pick it up over the healing options, but like there where you've got option of fight power, crit chance, I'd take the crit chance. So, the next big thing is skip stages. I'm pretty sure I can click it without actually skipping stages. So, this is a fantastic option for people who are short on time, because you just get to skip 15 stages. Great. The problem at the moment is you get less resources. I wish I had thought about it and got the numbers beforehand. But I've tested this a number of times now, and I can guarantee
I have the answer.
Oh, you've got it handy. Go on, stick it in the
so
channel.
at the beginning, there's if you skip, you're missing out on up to 500 to 1,000 serum things.
Yeah.
And if you don't skip, you get those 500 to 1,000 because you get like up to 10 bosses.
Yeah, there's also variants based on getting another unique item, which hopefully I do get to see later, which is the slot machine, because you can't pick up the slot machine before you get the rewards. So there is actually a slightly higher variance there as well. So it's not that you can't skip. Like I often skip on my second account where I haven't got the time to sit and actually play the fights. And that isn't me. Owaf was speaking. And I got sidetracked now. So the skip is worth it in the sense of it's saving real life time, but the purpose of resources, you want to keep resources. If you want the maximum resources, you want to do it manually. So I am not going to skip. Cool. So as you can see, I wish I could press on the purple serum, so you can see that it's super kappa serum. You get jailbreak coins. The family bonus for me is maxed out, so I get a lot of jailbreak coins. Cigars, which are really useful for doing the cigar missions. In fact, I know it's a tiny optimization, but for argument's sake, I'm going to go back onto my street mission. I'm going to make sure I complete that cash mission so I can unlock 2 cigar fights, and I'm going to do 3 II's worth of, or slightly less than 3 II's worth of cigars, and then I'm going to come back out, collect that cigar mission, and then go back in. So I apologise for the bit of the jumping around, but I want to do my street missions. So it's a worthwhile optimization for other people, and therefore not a bad choice for the video, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit stilted coming out again. But there we go. So there's the resources you get for the fight itself. So, the thing to note is the sort of fight power that they're putting out against is always relative to your fight power. So you personally, whoever's watching this, unless you happen to also have my sort of capo lineup, you won't be against 25 billion. It will be whatever matches you. But again, it's a bigger number because they are assuming that you have all the bonuses from the artifacts. So the other thing this does is it means all of the skill damage is through the roof, crazy high damage. And things like the fight power bonuses aren't actually that special because they're not too dissimilar to what they would be base. Also note that they're using a lot of non-skinned versions of the capos, which, when I say are all tiny details, but they do make a big difference. The other thing to note is the healing is quite high, so it's something to bear in mind, but you'll see what will happen in a sec and why I'm sort of ignoring it. So you could, if you wanted to, spend the time to, like in PvP, spend a lot of time organising who you're fighting against, but because I've done this enough times now, I know my lineup's safe just to not do it. But what I will do to emphasise a point is I personally, because I have a leveled up CMV, I can run Azumi, CMV, and Eugenio. Not Eugenio, Muertos. What am I talking about? Blimmin' Tentacles, whatever his name is. My brain has skipped what his name is. Anyway, Tentacles, because that's what I'm going to call him. Is explicitly on the end of that set of 3. So he has max dodge talents equipped, so he will have the fun and joy of being on the end and being attacked by 3 capos. He will also have a lot of dodge chance, so that he's not going to die. He also has the passive skill, which will heal all the teammates. So I am playing it a little bit risky in the sense of I'm intentionally focusing more damage on Tentacles, but I'm using the fact that every single fight it will reset Tentacles heal, so you can keep healing stuff, and I'm using CMV's passive that means that Tentacles won't accidentally die, and therefore his health will constantly bounce back. So I'm using, in addition to the healing, I'm using over the top on the idea that Tentacles will be healing. The thing I'm also going to do for the early fights is I'm explicitly going to put in Ava, who's less stars, so you can see her fight power compared to everyone else's is a lot lower. But I'm using Ava here intentionally to die, and that will become important later. And I'll explain more later. So for the point now, I'm just going to fight. Also conveniently, since a lot of the fights are lined up this way, Tentacles being in the middle also helps for that. You could argue that I want to shuffle everything to be flipped, so this way round instead, but I'm lazy, so I just stick everything to the top. Then I'm going to fight. So what I'll slow it down for next one actually as well. What you should notice there is the fight happened very quickly, and not only because it was on 6 times speed, but there's a lot of damage going around. So it is a slightly That is the other reason to go the defensive bonuses, because everything already has a lot of damage and they are very squishy, so everything dies really quickly anyway. The other thing I didn't mention, which is important, is my CMV is also not only max star, but is also awakened for HP. So Tentacles also has a lot more HP than you expect him to have, and therefore he's very durable. That's the other reason I can cheese it and have him sitting on the end absorbing a lot. Because I have Azumi and CMV who are casting buff skills, the buff combo Lucky Dice will offer a lot of shields. It is probably a difficult choice between the 10% HP and the shields, because I really like the HP bonus. But both are good. I'm going to go for the shields because I don't have any shields yet. And this is why I am using the trick with Ava intentionally dying, because a lot of the fights you will get the option to either heal everyone 50%, which I don't need because everyone is already full, because of the tense healing, because of the healing artifacts, and therefore I can use the 1 res. Cool. Claim. And then I'm going to jump out for my street mission. Claim that. I'm going to get another cash mission. Which I already have enough for. I'm going to swap it back to 2. Claim that. And then there you go, I got back to 2 cigars, so I can go back and do more jailbreak. Right, next fight. So, the other thing to notice here, and again, I'm not going to go through it every time, but just I will show the magnifying glass for each fight. Notice how many damage skill capos there are, and notice how big those numbers are. So, this hits all opponent capos and does 43 billion. And if you see my total health in the top left, I only have 200 billion split across 4 capos. So 43 billion times 4 is 160 billion. So it doesn't quite one-shot my team, but for example, since there's 2 of them, although the second one does a lot less because it's not buffed, but across 43 there, across another 14 there, 40 here, although that's single target, and that's 30 single target. There's a lot of damage skills that trigger and have the potential to do more than your full HP's worth. And you've got to remember I've also chosen the HP option, so could be even more devastating. So that's the other reason I sneak Ava in, is because she occasionally just absorbs one of those 30 billion shots, even though she doesn't have that much health. Which is a very good way of absorbing the damage, even though you're not actually absorbing it. And it just gives Tense that opportunity to live a little bit more. Again, the other thing which is very subtle, which you can't directly see, is because Ava has a Plasma Blaster, she's also offering that additional crit chance. So I'll already be at 100% crit, although I don't specifically need her for that. I could, for argument's sake, put Miranda in there, or I could put Omega in there. It's just a capo which is low, just to absorb it. The reason I'm using Ava is because of her dodge passive. And since the buff skills trigger the shield artifact, it's another good reason to run it on top of the fight power and the actual dodge it gives. So if you happen to have a maxed Ava and you wanted to use her as part of your main lineup, you could still use other capos in that sort of sacrifice slot. Right, was there anything else? No, so the reason I've slowed it down this fight is so we can watch it a little bit more closely. So notice that first round, I've almost one-shot 3 capos. So in 2 rounds, I've killed almost everything. And notice how much healing the bandage offered to Azumi, who almost died. So it is... That fight lasted, let's say, 3 rounds. It might have been 4, but not many rounds. And how much damage and how quickly they do that damage So that is why I generally focus and suggest focusing on the HP, at least initially. Once you have a lot of the artifacts, and we'll see later in the rounds, that you don't end up with this such a drastic sort of damage spike, so you're safer to start picking more offensive ones. And here is the other reason I like running that sacrifice slot in slot 4 for me. Is the curse shields. That just gives a shield to everyone else who's still alive by 15% of health. So it's up against the hammer, which I think is awful because it adds fight power, but only after the opponent's already started dying, which means the fight's already over. The ice soda I do like because I run a lot of support skills, but again, since it's 10% fight power, I will pick that later when I get the opportunity, or if I get the opportunity to. But for now, I'll take the curse shield. Again, I got the res option. So one thing I will do later is if Ava is dead and I don't get the opportunity to res her, I will not put a fourth capo in. I'll just keep running with 3 until I get the opportunity to res her. That means I'm in control of who I'm resing when I get that chance, because normally it's random. And if there is for some chance that happens that your tentacles gets one shot in my lineup, I don't want to have a chance of resing tentacles or resing a random lower star capo, and therefore suffering for it. So it's also a safety net to say that if I've only got, let's say, Ava, and let's say Tense somehow does die, then I've got that safety net that the res chance is still 50-50 between Ava and Tense. Okay, fight. Search. So again, lots of damage capos, 27 billion, 40 billion, 17 billion. And notice that 67 billion of healing is absolutely insane. But when we actually go through the fight, and I'll speed up to times 2 because we don't need to watch it in so great detail, but notice how much healing he doesn't actually get to do when the fight happens. Because everything dies so quickly, it doesn't actually matter. So, okay. So, because I personally have so much dodge, I don't need the ring to give me the 5% dodge. But again, on my second account, whenever I see those dodge options come up, I think about it quite a lot, because it's normally something that's a worthwhile option. Sorry, I don't know if people can hear Cookie and Biscuit barking in the background, but I'm going to have to go and see to them, so I'll be back in 1 sec. Boys! In you come! You'll be glad to know they were just playing. Right, where was I? Oh, the dodge chance is good and is really useful. But because I already have it, I wouldn't pick it. But again, for my second account, where I don't have that luxury because I don't have the full talents, I would pick the dodge chance. Since it's up against HP, I'd still consider the HP. And on this count, I'll definitely go with the HP. Although the invisibility cloak, again, because I'm using that Ava sacrifice, that 10% dodge chance is also kind of a good idea. They're all good options, really. But in this case, I'll go with the HP. And again, I get the res, because I'm lucky. Continue. So, you'll see the pattern coming up. Look at that! Once again, lots of damage skill capos. Notice the on death skill will be disabled because of tentacles and the pig's blood. So even though that 26 billion is quite high, it won't actually go off. And 128 billion will one-shot anyone on my team. So that is why CMV is a good option to avoid that happening in the first place. There is also things like Ava absorbing it, and there is also the shields that you get from the, I've forgotten what the artifact's called, but the one that where the buff skills offer shields can also prevent that. So that's the reason that I like those ones as well. So 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, 6. Okay, so that one's quite a long fight relative to the other ones. Okay, so now I've got the option lifesteal, support skill adding fight power, and because I again personally don't have any damage skills, I just don't even look at them. On my second account, again, I don't actually have any, so I rarely pick them. But anything which is dealing more damage generally, I would avoid, but anything that offers healing may be a good idea. So again, I'm going to go with the lifesteal. Also going to take the time to have a look at my pack just to double check if I'm missing anything. So the one that I'm missing that I particularly want is the purple vial, which heals me at the end of combat. Cool. Fight. So Ava is dead. I didn't get the res, and I'm intentionally not going to place anyone in that slot. So I'm now just running with 3 capos. And again, they have crazy high damage. If I wanted to min-max, I'd probably shuffle stuff around to avoid the damage from... I want to say that's Pedro, but I'm terrible with names, so... I'm also just going to leave it, because I'm pretty confident it'll work, because I've done it enough times now. It's the one time it won't work, and I'll die a horrible death from it.
Why are some of like the capos on the other team like some of the hello?
You were breaking up. I assume the question is
Yeah,
why
no,
have they got
sorry,
the
I
huge
got
buff?
pulled.
So the reason they have all those weird buffs on them is because that's how they've balanced it. So it's just the way the game works rather than because of anything specific that's going on. It's generally to Jailbreak. So this was the slot machine that I was describing earlier, the 25% chance to double rewards. So I personally value that really highly because it gives me more resources, so I pick that over practically anything else that shows up. In fact, I will always pick it first over everything else unless I misclick. The protective helmet, there's one for each nation. So again, because I'm running Japan, Mex, and then potentially a second Japan, the Italian one has 0 use for me, but the 20% HP, if it was a Mexican one, for example, I would pick. The 10% HP, if it was Japan with the potential of being 20%, again, I would potentially pick over other ones because it offers HP and I love HP. And again, it's against damage skill 1, but at least that's the healing version of the damage skill 1, again, because I wouldn't pick that for my setup. So again, I've got the res, so this will res Ava. Now notice, even though I've got low HP, I don't know if I can show it in here, yeah. Notice even though I've got low HP on Azumi and CMV, I'm quite happy that they're going to be okay. So even though the heal does look like a good option, they will get more effective HP by resing Ava, who can then absorb the damage anyway. Finally, so the option in the bottom right hand side that you should always do the fights in the bottom right hand side first because they offer more rewards. So they, again, I believe they're random, and that's part of the chance of they are some of the reason that Skip doesn't have as much resources because you skip all of these bonus fights essentially. The other thing to note about these bonus fights is even if Ava was dead, I'd still be able to use Ava. And because this bonus fight doesn't matter if anyone dies, I'll even stick Miranda in for the crit damage bonus. Just because I'd win the fight without her, but for argument's sake, I'll stick her in. Again, notice 2 damage skill capos and really high crazy numbers on them. And everything get melted. 1, 2, And then this is why I've got CMV, because of how dangerously low everyone went, but then Tentacles heal fools heals everyone. So it makes it look easy in the end. So here we go, here's one of these choices which I'm not a great fan of, so I've either got fight power, or 5% dodge chance. I'm going to go for the dodge chance, but it doesn't, I'm going to do that for prosperity. If it was not on the video recording, I'd be tempted to pick the extra fight power. But it's probably the wrong choice, but I'd do it anyway. So notice there that even though Ava and Miranda died in that combat, they're still alive. So those bonus fights, you can just use whatever lineup you want, as anything that dies in those bonus fights don't affect your main lineup. But notice it's auto-picked that previous lineup, so Miranda's still in there, so you've got to be careful if you're swapping capos around for it, that you remember to swap them back out afterwards. Cool. Again, lots of damage capos. Notice there's 2 on death ones. Notice how much damage that on death one does. That's my entire team's health, but to a single target. So that one-shots anything, which is pretty fun. So that's the other reason to run well, I said run CMV for many reasons, but that specifically is the reason in Devil Jailbreak that I highly recommend running CMV even if they're not maxed. Cool. So I'm going to start trying to speed up. And also the other reason is the Pig's Blood to avoid that on death skill triggering in the first place. There you go, so it didn't trigger. But I'm going to now start trying to go through these fights a little bit quicker because it does get very repetitive. But I will just make some comments on specifically, like here we go, we've got the first stamina vial. So healing 10% at the end of battle. Because you get those on-death triggers that reduce your HP and you want to be topped off for the start of every fight, that's why stamina vial is good. Again, I get the res, so I get my Ava back, and notice the trigger of the slot machine means I've got double resources. So I get 40 more serum, which doesn't sound like a lot, but over time it'll add up. Again, I've got bonus fight. Again, lots of damage capos, lots of big numbers. Again, the fight will happen very quickly. And you also notice how much dodging that Tensor's doing, because that's what he's here for. So, bandage or either of the on-death effects, they're all good choices. I'll go with the bandage in preference. So I still pick the guaranteed healing effects over the on-death bonus health, for example. It does just matter what it's up against as to what you pick. Again, lots of damage capos. I'll keep saying that. I'll keep showing you. I won't keep showing all the numbers because they're just big numbers. Again, so I've now got max crit. I don't have any Italian capos, so I'm going to pick the dodge chance, even though I don't really need it because the other two do nothing. Again, if it was my second account, I'd be picking that crit chance. Again, I'm picking the bottom right fight whenever it shows up. Again, on death capos that do tons of damage. Again, this fight was actually quite a long one compared to the other ones, but they don't necessarily go on that long. And I finally get to pick up my ice soda, so it's up against dodge chance, which I don't need. And I'd still probably pick the dodge chance if I was on my second account, but for this one, I'll pick the ice soda. And also note that those side fights offered 100 serum, where this fight's only offering 40 serum or 48 serum. So those, if you miss out on any of those side fights, you're really hurting yourself. Always try and do them first. So I don't have any recovery skills. The recovery skill trigger does not trigger on tentacles. So for me and most people using meta capos, that does precisely nothing. So I've got dodge on death or the additional fight power. So I'm going to go with the dodge, because the fight power when the opponent's capo is dying is going to do practically nothing. Again, I get to res my Ava. Got the bonus again. Lucky me. Again, going to do the bottom right fight. So what I will now do is I'll continue doing this, but I'm not going to constantly commentate on the fact that it's, once again, lots of damage, so on and so forth. And I'll start talking about what I would do if I didn't have these sets of capos, and how exciting that was with Tense dropping solo, is On my second account, I do not have a max CMV or a focused CMV, and I do not have the same sort of setup. I don't have the same amount of health on tentacles, but generally speaking, I use the same sort of strategy, except I do run 5 capos. Let me just pick one of these quickly. But I do the same sort of strategy. I run the same 4 core capos because I want to run CMV in the 3 that I'm focusing. And I have a additional capo that I stick on the end that if they die, I do not keep putting extra ones in to die in that slot. Now, some of this strategy revolves around the fact that I'm focusing on 3 capos rather than 5, so I have 3 slightly stronger capos, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do it for yourself. It means if you're running 5, you're focusing 5 and you're running 5, more what I mean is don't stick a understarred capo in just so you've got the full 5 slots used. Wait, try and see if you can do the fights just with 4 capos so that when you do get that res, you're guaranteed it on your strong capo. Again, I'm just going for more healing. So that's generally the strategy. The other small things you can do if you want to optimize is 3 terrible choices. So when I get 3 terrible choices like this, the bonus fight power is marginally better than everything else. And also, once I've got past the first, what's this, 4, 8, 9, sort of the first 10, 11 fights, it starts to become a lot easier because I've just got so many artifacts and so many buffs that it doesn't really matter. I generally start paying less and less attention as it's going along. It's really the first few that really make a difference. But the thing I do want to highlight, and is conveniently where I've stopped, there are these boss fights, and if I just go into the fight, this is worth mentioning, is how much bonus fight power he has. So that boss is more than twice as strong as every other capo in there, and because of the capo choice he has, is 100% bonus fight power. So if you have tentacles to stun him, that's the other reason he's conveniently already placed middle position, to avoid that buff, but also to stun and nerf the bosses. This is where, if I was really min-maxing, is where I'd explicitly put in Ava, and then not bother putting them in for the fights in between. But again, because I've done this so many times and I know I can be lazy and just constantly put Ava in every fight, and it works out okay for me. For my second account, I do need to be a bit more careful, so I do sometimes use that optimization depending on how lucky I am with rolls for healing options early on. So, for argument's sake, I'm now going to not use Ava until the next boss fight, and I'm going to try and consciously do that. And again, so because it's the bonus fight, I can put Miranda in. Again, the fight's over really quickly. Miranda adds a lot of damage because I've got 100% crit chance. Again, I've got 3 bad options, so I'm just choosing the flat bonus fight power because it's marginally better. And again, I'm going to take both these out, so I'm going to consciously save Ava for the next boss fight. So yeah, again, stacking loads of lifesteal, stacking loads of healing is just generally better because you already do enough damage and surviving. I'm really hoping I get to see my favourite artifact, but it's just not showing up so far, so I don't get to show. And again, whilst these fights are going at 6 times speed, it can look very close and scary, but again, because I've done it enough now that I can have the faith in CMV protecting tents and the tents heal triggering. And this is one of the ones that I wish I had seen earlier because it proves my point, is the crew armour. It's one of the best options that can come up because there are so many damage skills that do so much damage. Reducing that is really important. If you get enough crew armours early, you can autopilot the whole lot, because the only thing that's scary is that, because you've got so much dodge chance, the 75% dodge chance cap for me, because you've got all that dodge chance, it's unlikely you're going to die from the auto attacks, because you've got the stun, the fights are so short, but also because you've got 75% dodge chance. and then the damage skills are the only things that can really kill you, and therefore reducing that damage by 25%, or the legendary version of it reduces it by 50%, is incredible. And also, as you get more and more of the shield stacks. So again, I'm going to choose the fat fight power over the other options. Again, more bonus fights in the bottom right. And this is the point where I really would autopilot. Again, you saw Azumi drop really low and ends up being really low, but since it's bonus fight, it doesn't matter. This is a slightly difficult choice because the stamina vial is legendary and gives healing, but because I've got a couple of them now and I've only got one lucky dice shield option, and it's the epic one shields 2 instead of 1, and the legendary one shields 3, I'm going to pick the lucky dice even though it's a lower rarity because I have less of them. You need to be slightly flexible on that if you want to optimize, and try to remember what you've got between them and what you're lacking. So I know I've got a couple of bandages, I know I've got plenty of life steal, I know I've got a couple of vitalities now. So again, I can start paying less attention now that I've got the second shield as well. But it probably means I'll focus the lucky dice over other options that show up. This was a boss fight, and I said I was explicitly going to use the Ava on this one, so there you go. I think this is a boss fight at least, I wasn't paying enough attention. I said I was going to pay attention, then I didn't. Dodge chance over other options which aren't dodge chance. Again, probably at 75% because everything's hitting tense, but it will help Ava and CMV a tiny little bit. Again, I get to res the Ava. I was one fight before the boss fight, I was one out. Cool. Also, notice how strong the opponents get fight power wise. It gets some really crazy numbers. Oh, so I've now got a damage skill which I can't help, Italian which doesn't help, so I have to choose a hammer even though I don't like it. But notice how crazy those fight power numbers get in the opponent's side. It's 63 billion for this one, and that it's a comfortable fight even though I'm at 17 billion. It's honestly all about tense dodging everything. There you go, this is my 50% crew armor, love it. The CMV protecting him via not being able to die, and then tense healing everything. So good options to run alongside CMV and tense are things like Azumi because of her fight power buff. I'm going to choose Mex. If you had a GG, that would be another good option in that end slot. Ava, again, if you're focusing Ava, you don't have to run Ava in that suicide slot. I'm trying to think of a better way of describing it, but I'll go with that one. You can run things like Miranda. Omega can do some crazy work by rezzing things. The Awakened Chiyu and Gianluca can do a lot of work. I already mentioned that you can run a full Tomo team. I haven't tried Awakened Godfather yet. I'd assume he is somewhat useful. He could also potentially act as a pseudo healer in the sense of he's offering a shield, but he can't shield himself. So I guess that's probably slightly less value, but I guess it wouldn't be too bad. I have 3 options that I can't use. Excellent. I will pick one at random. And again, you can see how well this strategy works, just constantly rezzing Ava. I do feel like I'm kind of cheating at this point because I'm fully switched off now, and I'm just pressing buttons. But it's more that I've done this enough times now, and because I know what I'm picking, and because I know that everything leading up to this point is all sorts of gone as planned, that it's going to be very easy, and therefore I don't have to pay attention. And I've also got, they go, all 5 of them are damage capos, but now I've got 75% damage reduction, or 50 plus 25, depending on how it actually works, that they barely tickle, so they're actually the least scary combats. Japan, doesn't really matter. Cool.
I have a question for your for a Japan team. I have in my jailbreak. I need to look at my team. How do you look at your team, Capo? I have Chio, Tomeo, Ava. I need to think. CV and Izumi. I think that's what it is. Um, so because most of them are Japan, is Chio a good option?
Yeah, so what you're aiming to do if you're running that sort of lineup is you're just aiming to one-shot the opponents or pretty close to one-shotting everyone, and therefore the fight doesn't actually happen. Because, as I said for this particular round, that the first few fights are the hardest, what you're aiming to do for the first few fights is just one-shot everything, and then as the fights get harder and you can't one-shot everything, you come close to one-shotting everything because you're also focusing on the Japan fight power bonuses. Um, you are then um, only at risk of the on-death capos turning around and one-shotting your team. So you can carefully position Chiyu opposite them to debuff them and stun them, and especially if you've got Pig's Blood, you can auto disable the fact that their death skill will trigger in the first place. Um, it also requires a little bit more paying attention to make sure you are doing that sort of thing, whereas you can be lazy with the option that I've chosen and don't have to pay it as much attention.
Yeah. I've
Yeah,
put my team in the voice chat. I think
yeah,
that's what it was.
yeah. It requires a little bit more shuffling to be effective, which is more about time saved rather than you can't do it. You also have to remember that by positioning that way round, that the boss won't be taking the Gift of the Samurai damage. So it's very dependent on which capos you have. Um, but Omega, I'd imagine, would do a fair amount of lifting if anyone ever does die, that he will just res them. And it doesn't, it just counts whatever happens at the end of combat. So because you've got the res, from Omega, if they survive at the end of combat, even if they died mid-combat, they still get to go on and fight. Cool. And then the last fight. Always cross your fingers on the last fight for the slot machine to trigger because you get double keys, and everyone loves double keys. See, Miranda didn't even die, even though she has comparatively low health, and it didn't trigger, and I'm very disappointed that I didn't get to. It's 25% chance. I'm not actually that disappointed. I just, as I say, cross your fingers. And then I guess it wouldn't be complete if I didn't mention the shop. Because I have the maxed bonus, I can just purchase everything that I want to purchase, so it's easy to say. The Capo choice boxes for me are super valuable. The blue key is, or mystery key as it's properly called, super value. The gold keys, which lots of people overlook, are cheap and actually have a reasonably good amount of value. Because 10 of them you're guaranteed one epic, and 9 times out of 10, or slightly less than 9 times out of 10, but roughly 9 times out of 10 from a blue key you'll get one epic. They aren't as bad as it sounds, especially when you compare it to the selection key, so the nation trait key. At 1,000 coins is actually worse value than the gold keys for me. DNA doesn't matter so much early game, but it's nice to accumulate early because late game you will always need DNA, always need more DNA. So that one has quite a lot of value to me. The cigar boxes you don't really need, but they're also really cheap, so they're nice to have on hand. So again, I'll purchase that. I would probably leave the selection key as the one that if you can't purchase it, that you can't purchase it and be fine, but because I can, I will. And then the Super Capo Serum, again, if you're just hitting 80 and you can't really afford it, it's probably the one I'd skip, even though it has huge amounts of value in the late game, because again, a bit like DNA, you always need more of it. So again, I can afford it. I would suggest not buying the skulls because they're really expensive and you can rarely afford that many. For the capo copies that you get at the top, and this will vary wildly from one player to the next, so I'm not just going to say my way is the correct way, But me personally, I would not purchase any of the 8K copies unless it's one of the capos that I know I need a copy of. So, for example, if I am currently working on Gianluca, if Gianluca was in the shop, I would go and purchase him. But because none of the ones I'm currently working on is in the shop, I won't purchase any. And what I'll do is I'll slowly accumulate more coins, again, because I've got maxed out family bonus, so that when it does come up and it refreshes every month, 30 days, I can't remember whether it's exactly a month or it's exactly 30 days, but something like that, they refresh the top 8 capos choices that you have. So we've currently got 23 and a half days, 23 days, 5 hours till next one comes up, and I've got 24k saved up, so I can buy quite a few copies. I'm now going to have to do the maths because I can't just leave 8, 16, 24, 3 copies. There you go. I feel better now. Cool. Is there anything worthwhile mentioning? Don't be afraid if devil mode is too difficult. It is me making it look easy rather than it actually being easy. When it first came out for the first, I don't want to say a week, but something like that, there was a fair amount of time where I was trialing things and my old strategy did not work. I can't actually remember what my old strategy was now for context, but whatever I was doing previously wasn't working, and it took me a little bit to figure out this strategy, but this now really, as I say, it feels very, I can walk through it and not have to pay much attention to it. And also, I suggest that other people do try different strategies, but it may be if you're struggling that you just need to change something up, rather than necessarily copying me, but just try something different to what you're currently doing because it will work better. The only other thing that I didn't mention is you can resurrect for diamonds. Again, personally, I feel like that is a very expensive way of getting through it. So unless you get really unlucky on the first few stages, it might be worth spending it. But me personally, I try to avoid it best I can. Cool. I feel like that about wraps it up. So, unless anyone has any questions, I'll leave it there. And then I'll open up general questions afterwards. I just mean specifically questions relating to Jailbreak for the purpose of the recording. That was a massive silence. Not I'm expecting people to talk, I'm expecting people to type if they do want to ask a question. And of course, you can talk if you wish to. No? Cool. Right. Well, I'll call it there for them for the recording. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for that.